A very good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the School of Education Innovations in ELT workshop series. And this is already our third workshop of this series. And the initiation of this workshop series is all because of the late Professor Dr. Gana Kumaran Subramaniam, the head of School of Education, University of Nottingham, Malaysia. He is truly an icon in the field of education, and those who know him, we know that he was such a passionate, generous, creative, and he was a very, very inspiring educator. It was actually his passion and his effort to provide his students with the exposure to different ELT products and resources in the world that have made this initiative a reality. Though he has left us, but his legacy will stay with us and will surely be carried on. So let's take a 1-minute moment to cherish all the good memories we have had with him. So remember his very good sense of humor, remember the way he used to tease all of you, and then we start the session with a big smile, and that's what he would want. So let's take a 1-minute moment. All right, thank you. So on behalf of Professor Gana, I would also like to thank Keith, the Managing Director of University Bookstore Malaysia, which you have met him last week. So he assured me that he will support us in continuing Professor Gana's initiative. And I clearly remember what he said, he said, anything for Gana. So thank you so much for your kindness and your support and generosity, Keith. Thank you so much. And last but not least, the very important person of this session, Terry Phillips. He is the speaker of this session. And once again, on behalf of Professor Gana, I would like to thank Terry for coming forward to support the University of Nottingham, Malaysia, and the School of Education to share ELT resources that are 21st century and that are well researched in the area of ELT. In this session, he will share with us 2 materials, their features and how they work. Terry is based in the UK, and he is so kind, who even agreed to do a session with us, which would have been an earlier time, which is 4 a.m. in the morning in the UK. But it was only fair for us to reschedule to find an appropriate time that works well for both of us. And that's why we rescheduled it to 4 p.m. today. So Terry has worked in the ELT for more than 40 years. He is a teacher, he is a teaching supervisor, he is a language center owner, and he is also an ELT material writer. So his works are award-winning products. So from his profile, it is very clear to us that he is an educator who has got a very holistic understanding of education. He is now working in the sector of business management with Innova Press. So those of you who do not know Innova Press, it is an ELT publisher based in the UK, and it was founded in 2017. It produces readers, test preparation materials, and other titles based on the latest research into language education. Their main mission is to produce materials that generally meet the real-world needs of the students. It publishes a range of practice and preparation tests and self-study books for many of the most popular English language exams, such as IELTS, TOEFL, CEQB, and with more titles added in regularly. Innova Press also calls on a large number of freelancers and outsourced work. So you may want to find out the internship opportunities with Innova Press maybe. So, okay, I do not want to take so much time of the 1-hour session. So over to you, Terry. Thank you so much.
Wonderful introduction. Thank you. Superb. This is Innova. This is me, but you've already heard all about that. By the way, these slides are all available to you. After this session, I'll send them through and they can be sent on to you. I'm sure there'll be, well, I hope there'll be things on here that you would like to look at again. This first session is about the Innova Reading Bookshelf. But the question that a lot of people asked us at the very beginning was, why do we need more graded readers? There are thousands, perhaps tens of thousands of graded readers, mostly out of the United States and Britain, some out of Australia and New Zealand. Surely, graded readers that were originally written for native speakers, surely they can be used, perhaps with slight adaptation, for non-native speakers. Children of 3, 4, 5 who need to learn to read in English, just like children of 3, 4, 5 need to learn in their native language. Why do we need more graded readers? Well, firstly, at 3 years old, an English native speaker child knows about 700 words, their meaning and their sound in speech. A 3-year-old English-speaking child knows cat is a furry thing that you can keep as a pet. If you think of that number, 700 words, that means they know the first 200 words in English, the 200 most common words, and they know all the little words, the function words as well. Perhaps surprisingly, a native speaker child at 3 knows all 20 English vowels. I'm sure you know that the vowel system in English is particularly problematic. Depending on the child, they know between 5 and 13 of the 24 consonants. 3-year-old children make quite a few mistakes with the pronunciation of English consonants. They know some morphology. Morphology is the endings or the beginnings of words that change the meaning. English is a morphosyntactic language. Native speakers at 3 years old know some of the morphology, and they know most of the syntax. That's a very important point, that last one, a very important point, because English is largely syntactic. In other words, the word order is more important than the word form. Jack killed Jill is not the same as Jill killed Jack, but we haven't changed any of the form of words, only the order of words. In a fascinating study in the States,
what we must do is present those simple patterns
over
and over and over again, so that the young learner internalizes the patterns.
Sorry, for some reason we've got the sound on the back of this. I don't know why that's happening. Let me stop the share for a moment and see if I can stop the noise in the background.
All right, no problem, Terry.
Okay, let's try again. You might have to ignore that noise in the background. It's from a lecture I gave and then sent the slides. So this is a research that was done with 3-year-old children in the States. They recorded the spoken language. This is the spoken language of 3-year-old native speaker children. And what you'll notice here is they didn't make many mistakes with the syntax. They made some mistakes with the form, the morphology, fold, splash, stuck, him. I've never actually heard a child make that mistake, but clearly someone did in this research. But notice there's hardly any mistakes in the word order of these 3-year-old children.
Aristotle.
Here are some mistakes.
Man is a pattern maker.
Here are some mistakes that they did make.
Are superb at making patterns, if you give them enough examples.
Right, I'm going to have to let myself speak sometimes rather than me speaking. The point about this slide is that the daddy gave her is a syntactic mistake because give is a ditransitive verb. The child needed another object but didn't provide it. Riding is an intransitive verb, but it needs a full adverb. And the child did not give the full adverbial. What was it riding on? They messed up those horrible phrasal verbs. People who are learning English still make mistakes with that when they get to C1. But look at how many of those basic patterns are correct on that page. The boy's throwing snowball. The boy falled off the stool. Falled is wrong, but the word order is correct. A mum lost she seatbelt. He can't get down by himself. What's the point of all this?
Knows the pronunciation of some phonemes in each word and already knows the syntax of this sentence. We saw in that. What about the non-native speaking child? What is the learning task for him or her? The learning task for a non-native speaker child is enormous if we haven't prepared them. As we say nowadays, if we haven't scaffolded the sentence by previously introducing the meanings of the words, the sounds of the words, pronunciations, and then the written form. If we just go back to our cat sat on the mat, well, okay, that's not bad to begin with. A for a. And that sentence carefully proves that rule. But if we look at the first 200 words in terms of frequency in English, sorry, the first 100 words in terms of frequency in English, look at the pronunciation of the letter A. There are 26 words with the letter A in the first 100. 26 words with the letter A and 9 different ways of pronouncing that letter.
Okay, so what's all that got to do with the Innova Reading Bookshelf? The point is that research shows that a non-native speaker child faces a completely different learning task when they start to try to read in English. They need to understand the basic sound-sight relationships in English. Cat has the sound cat. And in the early stages of reading, they need to understand the connections between the form of content words and meanings. They don't necessarily know that cat is an animal. And the written form, sound, and usage of function words, some, and, the, her, his, their. We need to teach our young learners that we can't simply give them readers for native speakers and assume they will be able to do the same decoding that a native speaker child is capable of. By the time a native speaker child has reached the age of 6, they know 10,000 words in English. So most words in a reader will not be new for their meaning. They will be new for the sound-sight relationship. We also need to teach the syntax, the common sentence patterns. We definitely don't need to teach them words like subject and verb and object and complement and adverbial, but as you heard me say when I was trying to mute myself, as Aristotle said, man is a pattern maker. If we present enough examples of simple patterns, the brain of the non-native speaker child will pick them up in exactly the same way as the brain of the native speaker child picks them up. Why does the native speaker child at 3 know all those syntactic patterns? Because they've heard so many models as they've grown up in their 3 years. We also need to teach our young learners to sight read 76%. That's what we try to do in the Innova Reading Bookshelf of the common words. And we also managed to teach 86% of the function words. The point about that cat sat on the mat example is phonics works when you know some basic words. But the first 200, 300 words in English are largely irregular because frequency of use preserves irregularity. So every time a non-native speaker meets a word in their early learning in the written form, is a new decoding task. Why isn't the word what, W-H-A-T, why isn't it pronounced wahat? It just isn't. And the child has to learn that. So what do our readers try to do? Our readers at grades 1 to 5 are all narratives because young children love stories, but also because narrative structure makes it easier for teachers to check reading comprehension. With young learners, you should only be checking what we call truth value. If a child says to his or her mother, "We goed to the zoo yesterday," the mother says yes, even though the word goed is wrong. The only reason she would say no is if they went to the circus yesterday. Mothers check truth value. They may correct form. Yes, that's right, we went to the zoo. But they don't negate the form. They don't say, no, that's wrong. They check truth value. Narrative structure provides endless opportunities to check reading comprehension, the truth value. What did the fox do? Where did the boy go? So in fact, I'd like to stop calling our course, our books readers now. They are a reading course. They try to take young non-native speakers step by step through the reading process that the native speaker does in a much more automatic way. So here are the key features. Classic tales, Princess and the Frog, The Piper of Hamelin, The Three Goats. This is because they have a wonderful narrative structure. That's why they've stayed popular for so long. The children may even know the stories. The non-native speakers may know them. That's fine. The task is not understanding the story. It's being able to read it in the foreign language. We take children to a magical land, which means the children are engaged with the animals and people. We start very low at CEFA A1. Most readers don't start that low. We end about A2, which if you remember the old, or if you ever knew the old terminology from CEFA, when it was just called the Common European Framework, that's just before you enter what they used to call threshold level. And threshold, B1, is the level at which you should be able to cope with most simple things that are thrown at you. We teach syntax in a systematic way. Notice the points on the extreme right there, level 1, level 2. This shows the book, the level and the book at which this pattern first appears. Characters recur, which means the children recognize them and remember the previous stories. They also begin to recognize some of the characteristics of the recurrent characters. The bird is clever, the fox is sly, but it's a bit stupid, and it always fails in its task. The characters do lovable things, funny, clever, silly things that the children can sympathize or empathize with. I talked about pattern forming. We have simple sentence patterns, which means that the children learn sentence structure without direct teaching. And we also have repetition of information in different ways, which means the children learn the grammatical relationships. They learn them without them being taught. I think this is one of the key points about teaching children. We should not worry too much about teaching. We should worry all the time about learning. Have we given enough learning access points for the child? We don't assume that the child knows nouns that are necessary for the story, so we caption them on the facing page. Recurrent sentences, audio. Reading is about sound-sight relationship, so clearly the children have to hear these stories as well as see them. We have speech and thought bubbles on the right-hand page, which tell a simplified version of the story. The dramatized version is a simplified version of the narration on the left-hand page. And a very key point, there's a hook on each page, the green words at the bottom there. What happens next? I said that narratives were good for checking comprehension. The hook is probably the best way of checking comprehension, because reading, as I'm sure you know, is prediction and hypothesis checking. If we are reading effectively in our own language or a foreign language, we are already ahead of the text. We know, or at least we think we know, what is going to happen next. We know it in terms of the words and even the pattern which is likely to come next. So what happens next? Read and choose. When the children turn over, they'll find the first sentence of the next page is one of those two. Did they choose it correctly? Picture dictionary with free audio. Exercises, but these exercises are based on reading, not anything else. The most the child has to do is write a number or draw a line or tick. Even when we look at comprehension, complex things like comprehension, the children only have to number the sentences in order. Grammar is only truth value. It's not form. A princess lives in a palace with her father, the king, her father, the queen. Well, both are correct in terms of form, but clearly only the king is correct in terms of truth value. And at the very end, we have a poem, which is recorded. And of course, the beauty of poems, well, A, they're fun, and B, they teach the natural rhythm and rhyme of English. So on the audio, you will hear the narrator saying, "A princess plays in a garden. She throws a ball up high." The rhythm and then the rhyme becomes automatic. We can ask the children to repeat the poem, to learn the poem, to go home and tell the poem to their parents to show that they really are learning English in our expensive schools. We provide a comprehensive guide, which means teachers and parents can see all the features. There are far more features than I've had time to talk about today. They can learn ways of exploiting the material in class or one-to-one. And as I said before, free audio online and free printed copy in bookshelf editions. We provide a clear learning path, a clear teaching path through the stories. First, check the illustration. How much do the children understand? Then the speech and thought bubbles, which is a simplified version of the story. Then the text, the narration. Then what happens next, the hook, and then the next page. Finally, we provide many extras. Some I've mentioned already, picture dictionary, exercises, poems, flashcards, but there are also puppets. In the printed books, on the back cover, there are push-out puppets. So the children can retell the stories. They can even make up their own stories, taking characters from different stories and putting them into their own scenarios. And there are animations and digital exercises.